If this video showed up for you, it's because this story will move and thrill you. So subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of story and comment what city you're watching from. Night fell over Harmony Creek like a heavy, damp blanket, bringing with it the smell of asphalt wet from the fine rain that insisted on falling. The streetlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows on the deserted streets. Amidst the icy silence, only the rumbling engine of Officer Thomas Miller's patrol car broke the quiet. He was a man of few words, with tired eyes that had seen too much and a heart that held silent scars. Loneliness was his constant companion, an echo in the empty hallways of his small apartment and in the long hours of his night rounds. Thomas drove slowly, the headlights sweeping across worn facades and dark alleys. The radio crackled, bringing distant news that held no importance for him. He preferred the sound of his own silence, which allowed his thoughts to wander. His routine was a monotonous cycle: patrol, fill out reports, a solitary dinner, and then the next shift. There was no family, only the memories of a distant past he preferred not to revisit. The city, for him, was a series of problems to be solved, not a home. He merely existed, fulfilling his duty day after day. But in recent months, something subtle had changed. An unexpected presence, silent and persistent. It was on a particularly cold night, while Thomas was making his usual rounds through the old industrial district, that he saw him for the first time. A stocky, furry shadow, moving with surprising agility for its build. It was a bulldog, with a flattened muzzle and deep wrinkles, its large brown eyes fixed on the police car. He was dirty, thin, and the worn collar around his neck bore no identification. Thomas stopped the car, expecting the dog to move away, but he just sat on the sidewalk, watching. The officer honked lightly, without success. The dog didn't move, just tilted his head, as if trying to decipher the man inside the vehicle. Thomas, annoyed, thought about calling animal control, but something stopped him. There was a deep sadness in the bulldog's eyes, a loneliness he knew all too well. He sighed, accelerated, and continued his rounds, forgetting about the animal. But he didn't know that this casual encounter was just the beginning of something much bigger. The next night, to his surprise, the bulldog was there again, on the same corner, waiting. When Thomas's car approached, the dog began to follow him, keeping a safe distance, but never losing sight of him. The officer tried to ignore him, but the animal's persistence was remarkable. He seemed to have a mission, a purpose that Thomas couldn't understand. Why was this dog, abandoned and hungry, so interested in him? The mystery only grew. This became a routine. Every night, the bulldog, whom Thomas mentally nicknamed Shadow for his ability to appear and disappear in the shadows, waited for him. Shadow followed him for blocks, stopped when Thomas stopped, waited patiently while the officer handled a call, and reappeared as soon as he came out. Thomas started leaving a little food and water in a discreet corner of the park, and always found the bull empty the next morning. He didn't know it, but Shadow was becoming an essential part of his life. With each night, Shadow's presence brought a slight crack in Thomas's wall of loneliness. He caught himself smiling faintly upon seeing Shadow's tail wag cautiously, or noticing the dog's attentive gaze on him. It was a wordless companionship, a silent reminder that he wasn't completely alone in the world. But what really motivated Shadow to follow this lonely police officer? Thomas felt there was something more. One day, while patrolling a more isolated area of the city, Thomas noticed that Shadow was more agitated than usual. The dog didn't just follow him, he barked softly and tugged at his trouser leg, trying to direct him toward a dark, damp alley. Thomas hesitated. It was a dangerous area, known for sheltering illicit activities, but the desperation in Shadow's eyes was palpable. He knew the bulldog wouldn't lead him into danger without reason. Thomas, against his better judgment, decided to follow Shadow. The alley was a maze of garbage and old boxes, the smell of sewage mixed with something metallic and sweet. The dog advanced cautiously, but with determination. Thomas's every step was calculated, his hand on his holster. What could be waiting for them in this forgotten part of the city? The tension was almost suffocating. At the end of the alley, hidden behind a pile of rubble, Shadow stopped and barked again, this time with more intensity. Thomas approached, his heart pounding in his chest. It was then that he saw it. It wasn't a criminal, nor a victim of some crime. It was a rusted barrel from which a faint, almost inaudible sound was coming, a whimper. Thomas bent down, moving aside the planks and trash covering it. Inside, amidst dirty and torn blankets, was a child, a baby no more than a few months old, with pale skin and chapped lips, her eyes closed in a weak, hopeless sleep. Next to the baby, there was a crumpled photo of a smiling woman and a scribbled note, "Take care of her, please." Thomas's world collapsed. The officer, always so restrained, felt a wave of emotion hit him head-on. He gently picked up the baby, her fragile little body barely weighing anything in his arms. The smell of sour milk and desperation mixed with the smell of filth. The baby's eyes opened for an instant, revealing a deep blue before closing again. It was a miracle the child had survived. He called for backup immediately, but before the team arrived, he remained there, holding the baby, while Shadow nestled at his feet, head raised, watching them with a protective seriousness. The silence of that alley would never be the same for Thomas. He wasn't just a police officer. He was, in that moment, a savior. The story spread like wildfire. The baby, named Aurora by the nursing staff, was taken to the hospital, where she received the necessary care. Shadow, the four-legged hero, was taken to a shelter, where he received attention and food, but he wouldn't stop whimpering and looking for Thomas. The officer visited Aurora every day, feeling an unexplainable connection to that tiny life. He felt that he had a greater mission. The investigation revealed that Aurora's mother had been a homeless woman who had died a few days prior in a makeshift camp, likely from an illness. Shadow was his only companion, and somehow the dog knew that Thomas, the lonely police officer who patrolled those streets, would be the only hope for the abandoned child. It was an invisible bond of trust and desperation that united the man, the dog, and the baby. Thomas felt a complex mix of feelings: anger at the injustice, sadness for Aurora's mother, but also a deep gratitude to Shadow. That dog had not only saved a life, but had also reignited something within him. The loneliness that had once defined him began to dissipate, replaced by a warmth, a responsibility he never knew he needed. He thought about the days to come. He knew he had to do something. He couldn't just let Aurora go to an orphanage or allow Shadow to live in the shelter. He felt that his destiny was intrinsically linked to theirs. With every visit to Aurora, every pat he gave Shadow, the certainty grew. He was no longer just Thomas, the lonely police officer. He was a link, a protector. He began the process of adopting Aurora. It was a long and bureaucratic process, but he was determined. With every obstacle, he remembered Shadow's desperate look in the alley, Aurora's faint cry. With every report, every interview, he told the story of the hero bulldog, convinced that this atypical family was destined to be united. It was a battle he refused to lose. And what about Shadow? He couldn't leave him. The dog that had followed him for so many nights, that had trusted him to save a life, deserved a home. He knew his apartment rules forbade animals, but he was willing to defy everything. He visited Shadow at the shelter, and the dog would leap with joy, as if they had a secret language. The bond between them was undeniable. After months of waiting, the final decision came. Aurora would be his daughter, and Shadow would be his companion. The loneliness that had haunted him for years was finally replaced by the adorable chaos of a baby and the unwavering loyalty of a dog. Thomas's home, once silent and empty, now echoed with laughter, barks, and life. He was a father, a guardian, a complete man. Sometimes, saving someone is also a way of saving yourself. Thomas learned that love and connection can arise from the most unexpected places, brought by an abandoned dog and a baby in peril. He never looked at the streets of Harmony Creek the same way again. He was no longer just a police officer, he was a father, and his heart, once hardened,